There comes a moment in life when you realize that your biggest problem is not the situation around you. It is the noise inside your mind. Too many thoughts, too many opinions, too many fears, too many possibilities. You think about what happened yesterday. You worry about what might happen tomorrow. You imagine what other people are thinking about you. And somewhere between all of these thoughts, you are expected to make a decision. But how can you make a clear decision when your mind is constantly moving? Before you make an important decision, learn to become still. In a world that constantly demands your attention, stillness has become a rare form of strength. Messages arrive, opinions surround you, notifications interrupt you, and people expect immediate reactions. You are constantly encouraged to respond quickly, choose quickly, speak quickly, and move quickly. But speed does not always create clarity. Sometimes, the faster you react, the further you move away from what you actually believe. When your mind is overwhelmed, even a simple situation can feel complicated. A small disagreement becomes a major conflict. A delayed message becomes a story about rejection. A mistake becomes proof that you are not capable. A difficult day becomes evidence that your entire life is going in the wrong direction. The situation itself may be small, but your mind adds layer after layer of interpretation until the original problem becomes almost impossible to see. This is why the first discipline of clear thinking is to pause. A pause does not mean weakness. It means you refuse to allow the first emotion to control the final decision. When anger rises, you do not have to immediately respond. When fear appears, you do not have to immediately run. When excitement takes over, you do not have to immediately commit. You can simply observe what is happening inside you. Take a slow breath. Notice the tension in your body. Notice the thoughts moving through your mind. Notice the urge to react. You do not have to fight these thoughts. You do not have to suppress your emotions. Simply observe them without immediately obeying them. Imagine a glass of water filled with dust. If you keep shaking the glass, the water remains cloudy. But if you place it somewhere still and allow the dust to settle, the water gradually becomes clear. Your mind behaves in a similar way. When you continuously react, analyze, worry, and replay situations, your thoughts remain disturbed. When you create a moment of silence, some of that mental noise begins to settle. This is why taking a walk before making a difficult decision can be powerful. Sitting alone for a few minutes can be powerful. Writing your thoughts on paper can be powerful. Even taking several slow breaths before answering someone can change the quality of your response. You are creating distance between the event and your reaction. That distance gives you something valuable: choice. Without that space, you may confuse emotion with truth. You may think, I feel rejected, therefore I must have been rejected. You may think, I am afraid, therefore this must be dangerous. You may think, I am angry, therefore I must say something immediately. But feelings can change. A feeling can be intense without being permanent. What feels completely true at 8 in the morning may look very different after you have rested, reflected, and allowed your mind to settle. Before deciding, ask yourself one simple question. What is actually happening? Not, what am I afraid might happen? Not, what do I think this means? Not, what would other people do? Simply ask, what is actually happening? This question brings you back to reality. If someone has not replied to your message, the fact is that they have not replied. Everything beyond that may be interpretation. If someone criticized your work, the fact is that they gave criticism. Whether that criticism defines your worth is another question. If a plan failed, the fact is that the plan failed. It does not automatically mean that you are a failure. The mind often takes one event and turns it into an identity. You made a mistake, so you think, I am incapable. Someone rejected you, so you think, nobody will ever choose me. You experienced failure, so you think, I will always fail. Clear thinking interrupts this pattern. It allows you to look at an event without turning it into a judgment about your entire life. You begin to understand that an event is simply an event. Your interpretation comes afterward. This does not mean becoming emotionless. It means becoming aware. You can feel deeply and still think clearly. You can be hurt and still choose your words carefully. You can be angry and still remain respectful. You can be afraid and still take a thoughtful step forward. The goal is not to eliminate emotion. The goal is to stop emotion from automatically becoming action. When you practice this regularly, you begin to notice something changing inside you. Situations that once controlled, you begin to lose their power. You no longer feel the need to answer every accusation, defend every decision, explain every misunderstanding, or react to every provocation. You become comfortable with waiting. And sometimes, waiting is the wisest decision available. Not every message needs an immediate answer. Not every conflict needs your participation. Not every opportunity needs to be accepted. Not every opinion deserves your attention. Not every emotion deserves to become a decision. Give yourself permission to pause. In that pause, listen carefully. What are you assuming? What are you feeling? What are you afraid of? What truly matters here? When you ask these questions before acting, the noise begins to separate from what is real. You stop making decisions from the loudest emotion in the room and start making them from awareness. The world may continue moving quickly around you, but you do not have to move at the same speed. You can slow down enough to see clearly. You can breathe before you speak. You can observe before you judge. You can understand before you act. And with practice, this small pause becomes one of the strongest habits you can develop. Your emotions are powerful, but they are not always accurate instructions. They can tell you that something matters, that something feels uncomfortable, or that something needs your attention. But feeling something strongly does not automatically make your interpretation of the situation correct. One of the most important skills you can develop is learning to respect your emotions without allowing them to control every decision you make. When you are angry, your mind naturally looks for evidence that supports your anger. You remember the words that hurt you. You focus on the person's mistakes. You replay the conversation. You build an argument in your head. In that moment, your mind is not necessarily searching for truth. It is searching for confirmation. This is why reacting immediately can create problems that did not need to exist. You receive a message that feels disrespectful and you immediately write an angry response. You assume someone is intentionally ignoring you, so you distance yourself from them. Someone gives you criticism and you decide they are against you. A person makes one mistake and suddenly you judge their entire character. The emotion may be real, but the story attached to the emotion may not be. This distinction is essential. Your feelings deserve to be acknowledged, but they also deserve to be examined. Instead of saying, I am angry, so they must be wrong, try saying, I am angry. Why? Instead of saying, I am afraid, so I should stop, ask, what exactly am I afraid of? Instead of saying, I feel rejected, so nobody values me, ask, what actually happened that created this feeling? These questions create space between your emotional experience and your conclusion. Think of emotions as signals on a dashboard. If a warning light appears in a car, you do not smash the dashboard. You investigate. You ask what the signal means. In the same way, when anger, fear, sadness, jealousy, or anxiety appears, you do not need to suppress it or blindly obey it. You can investigate it. Fear may be telling you to prepare. Anger may be telling you that a boundary has been crossed. Sadness may be telling you that something meaningful has been lost. Jealousy may be revealing an insecurity you need to understand. But the emotion itself does not always tell you what action to take. That part requires awareness. Consider what happens when you are afraid of making a difficult decision. Your mind may immediately imagine the worst possible outcome. You might think about everything that could go wrong until the decision feels impossible. But fear often focuses on possibility rather than probability. Just because something could happen does not mean it will happen. This is where facts become important. Write down what you know, then write down what you assume. You may discover that the list of facts is surprisingly small, while the list of assumptions is much longer. For example, you may know that your manager asked to speak with you. Your mind may immediately assume that you are in trouble, that you have disappointed everyone, or that you might lose your position. Those are possibilities, not facts. When you separate the two, your nervous system begins to settle, because you are no longer treating imagination as reality. The same principle applies to relationships. Someone becomes quieter than usual instead of immediately deciding that they no longer care. Pause. There may be dozens of explanations that have nothing to do with you. They may be tired. They may be dealing with something privately. They may simply need space. Clear thinking does not mean ignoring patterns. It means refusing to create certainty where there is not enough evidence. This is especially important when you are emotionally attached to an outcome. The more you desperately want something to happen, the easier it becomes to see only what you want to see. You may ignore warning signs because you are excited. You may reject opportunities because you are afraid. You may stay in unhealthy situations because you are emotionally attached to the possibility that things will change. Strong emotions can distort both positive and negative situations. That is why you should sometimes make decisions after the emotion has settled. Sleep on it. Take a walk. Write about it. Speak to someone you trust. Return to the facts. Then ask yourself what choice aligns with your values rather than your temporary emotional state. This does not mean that emotions should be removed from decision making. A life without emotion would also be a life without meaning, connection, passion, and intuition. The goal is balance. Let your emotions speak, but do not give them the steering wheel. Let them show you what matters. Then allow awareness, reason, experience, and values to decide what you do next. You can be deeply hurt without becoming cruel. You can be angry without becoming destructive. You can be afraid without becoming paralyzed. You can be excited without becoming careless. You can feel uncertain without forcing yourself to choose immediately. The more you practice observing your emotions instead of immediately reacting to them, the more clearly you begin to understand yourself. And when you understand yourself, you become less vulnerable to every passing feeling, every outside opinion, and every temporary circumstance. You begin to recognize that an emotion is something you experience, not something you are. You can say, I am feeling anger. Instead of, I am an angry person. You can say, I am experiencing fear. Instead of, I cannot do this. That small change in language creates psychological distance. You are no longer trapped inside the emotion. You are observing it. And from that position, you have the ability to choose your response instead of simply repeating your first reaction. One of the greatest sources of mental confusion is the desire to control what cannot be controlled. We want certainty before we move. We want guarantees before we commit. We want to know that our decision will succeed, that people will respond the way we expect, and that the future will unfold according to our plans. But life does not work this way. The future always contains something unknown, and when you demand complete certainty before acting, you can become trapped in endless thinking. You may spend hours asking yourself, what if this goes wrong? Then another question appears. What if I choose the other option? Soon your mind creates dozens of possible futures, and you become exhausted without taking a single step. This is not always careful thinking. Sometimes it is fear disguised as analysis. Clear thinking begins when you recognize the difference between preparation and control. Preparation means doing what is within your ability. You gather information. You consider the consequences. You learn from experience. You ask useful questions. You make a plan. Control means expecting reality to obey that plan perfectly. You can prepare for a conversation, but you cannot control how another person will respond. You can work hard toward a goal, but you cannot control every circumstance that affects the result. You can treat someone with kindness, but you cannot force them to appreciate you. You can make a wise decision, but you cannot guarantee that every consequence will be positive. This distinction creates freedom. Ask yourself, what is actually within my control? Your effort is within your control. Your preparation is within your control. Your attitude is within your control. Your boundaries are within your control. Your response is within your control. Your willingness to learn is within your control. But another person's opinion is not. Their behavior is not. The past is not. The future is not. Every external circumstance is not. The moment you stop spending your energy trying to control these things, you create more mental space for the things that actually deserve your attention. Imagine that you are standing in front of a mountain. You want to reach the top, but you cannot see the entire path. Trees, rocks, and turns hide what comes next. If you refuse to move until you can see the entire route, you will never begin. Instead, you take the next visible step, then another, then another. Life often asks the same from you. You do not need to know exactly where every decision will lead. You need enough awareness to take the next responsible step. This is especially important when making major life decisions. You may be choosing a career, ending a relationship, starting a business, moving somewhere new, or changing a long-standing habit. Your mind may demand a guarantee that everything will work out. But no guarantee exists. There is only the quality of your preparation and your willingness to adapt. A strong decision maker understands that a decision is not always the end of thinking. Sometimes it is the beginning of learning. You choose, you observe the result, you learn, you adjust, you continue. This is very different from expecting yourself to make one perfect decision that determines everything. There is no perfect decision in an uncertain world. There is only the most conscious decision you can make with the information available to at you that moment. You should also be careful of confusing control with responsibility. Taking responsibility means asking, what can I do? Trying to control everything means asking, how can I make everything happen exactly the way I want. The first question creates action. The second often creates anxiety. Suppose you are preparing for an important interview. You can research the company, practice your answers, arrive on time, dress appropriately, and communicate clearly. Those things are yours to control. But whether the interviewer likes your personality, whether another candidate has more experience, or whether the company changes its plans is out your control. If you spend all your mental energy worrying about those things, you weaken your preparation. Bring your attention back. What can I do today? This question is powerful because it moves your mind from imagined futures into present action. The same principle applies to relationships. You cannot control whether someone stays, changes, understands you, or chooses you. You can communicate honestly. You can show respect. You can establish boundaries. You can decide what you will accept. Then you must allow the other person to make their own choices. This can feel uncomfortable because attachment often creates the illusion that if we try hard enough, we can control outcomes. But sometimes the healthiest action is to release the outcome while remaining committed to your values. Do your part. Then let reality respond. When uncertainty appears, do not immediately interpret it as danger. Uncertainty is simply the condition of not knowing yet. You do not have to fill every unknown space with fear. You can say, I don't know what will happen, but I know what I can do next. That sentence brings the mind back to strength because courage is not knowing the future. Courage is being willing to move forward without knowing everything. When you stop demanding certainty, decisions become lighter. Okay, you can gather what information is available, consider the risks, listen to your intuition, examine your values, and then act. Not because you know exactly what will happen, but because you trust yourself to respond when something unexpected happens. That is a deeper form of security, not the belief that life will always go according to plan, but the belief that you can meet life even when it does not. The quality of your decisions is often determined by the quality of the questions you ask yourself. Most people think they need more answers, but sometimes they simply need better questions. When the mind is confused, it tends to ask questions that create more fear. What if I fail? What if they reject me? Why is this happening to me? What will everyone think? These questions may feel natural, but they often keep your attention trapped inside worry instead of moving it toward action. Your mind will search for answers to whatever questions you repeatedly give it. If you constantly ask, what could go wrong? Your attention will naturally begin collecting evidence of danger. If you ask, what can I learn from this? Your attention begins searching for lessons. The situation may remain the same, but your relationship with the situation changes. This is why you must become conscious of the questions running through your mind. When something goes wrong, instead of immediately asking, why does this always happen to me? Ask, what is this situation showing me? Instead of asking, how can I avoid feeling uncomfortable? Ask, what is this discomfort trying to teach me? Instead of asking, what if I fail? Ask, what can I do to improve my chances of succeeding? Instead of asking, what will people think about me? Ask, am I acting according to my values? A better question moves your mind from helplessness toward responsibility. Consider how differently these two questions affect you. Why am I not successful yet? What can I consistently improve from today? The first question can make you compare yourself with others. It can create frustration and impatience. The second question gives you something practical to work with. It brings your attention back to your actions. Good questions do not necessarily make life easier. They make your thinking more useful. This becomes especially important when you are facing a difficult decision. When there are multiple choices, do not only ask which option feels easiest right now. Ask what each option is likely to create later. What happens if I continue this for another year? What kind of person will this decision help me become? Will this choice create more peace or more confusion? Am I choosing this because it is right for me or because I am afraid of disappointing someone? Would I still make this decision if nobody knew about it? These questions can reveal motives that are hidden beneath the surface. Sometimes we make decisions because we want approval. Sometimes we choose comfort because we fear growth. Sometimes we stay because leaving feels uncertain. Sometimes we say yes because saying no makes us uncomfortable. Sometimes we chase something because we want to prove our worth. A clear mind looks beyond the immediate emotion and asks what is really driving the decision. One of the most powerful questions you can ask is, what matters most here? When everything feels important, nothing feels clear. You may be worried about money, reputation, relationships, expectations, and the future all at the same time. But if you identify what truly matters, many distractions lose their power. Perhaps the decision is really about your values. Perhaps it is about protecting your peace. Perhaps it is about long-term growth. Perhaps it is about maintaining your integrity. Once you identify the deeper priority, the smaller details become easier to organize. You should also learn to question your own assumptions. Ask yourself, what am I assuming without evidence? This single question can prevent many unnecessary conflicts. You may assume someone is angry when they are simply tired. You may assume an opportunity is impossible when you have never actually tried. You may assume one failure means you are incapable. You may assume everyone is judging you when most people are focused on their own lives. The mind often fills gaps in information with stories. Better questions force you to examine those stories. There is another important question that can help you make difficult choices. What would I advise someone I love to do? When you are emotionally involved in your own situation, your judgment can become clouded. You may be extremely harsh with yourself or extremely protective of your current comfort. Imagining that someone you care about is facing the same situation can create useful distance. You may suddenly recognize that the advice you would give them is much wiser than the story you have been telling yourself. You might tell them to set a boundary. You might tell them to be patient. You might tell them to stop chasing approval. You might tell them to prepare and try again. Then ask yourself why you are unwilling to offer the same wisdom to yourself. Questions can also help you slow down before major decisions. Instead of immediately asking, should I do this or not? Break the decision into smaller questions. What do I know? What do I not know? What are the risks? What are the possible benefits? What is within my control? What would I regret ignoring? What choice is aligned with the person I want to become? Now the decision is no longer an emotional cloud. It becomes something you can examine. This is how clear thinking develops. You stop demanding instant answers from a confused mind. You learn to ask questions that reveal reality, responsibility, consequences, values, and possibilities, because sometimes the answer you are searching for is already somewhere inside you. You simply have not asked the question that allows you to see it. Clear thinking is not something you suddenly discover when a major problem appears. It is a skill that is built quietly through the small decisions you make every day. The way you respond to ordinary situations becomes the training ground for how you will respond when life becomes difficult. If you constantly act from impulse in small matters, it becomes harder to remain calm when something important is at stake. But if you practice awareness in your daily choices, you gradually develop a mind that can remain steady under pressure. Think about how often you make decisions without even noticing them. You decide when to wake up, what to eat, what to watch, what to read, how much time to spend on your phone, whether to finish a task, whether to keep a promise, and how to respond when someone annoys you. These choices may appear insignificant, but together they shape your habits, and your habits eventually shape the way you think and behave. This is why discipline begins with small things. If you tell yourself that you will wake up at a certain time and repeatedly ignore that promise, that promise, you are teaching your mind that your own decisions can be broken without consequence. But when you make a small commitment and keep it, you build self-trust. You say, I will finish this task. Then you finish it. You say, I will take a short walk. Then you take it. You say, I will stop scrolling and focus for 30 minutes. Then you put the phone away. These actions may not look dramatic, but they send an important message to your mind. When I decide something consciously, I can follow through. That trust becomes valuable when larger decisions appear. You also train your mind whenever you choose not to react immediately. Someone says something that irritates you. Your first instinct is to respond. Instead, you pause, you breathe, you decide whether the response is actually necessary. That moment is training. You are teaching yourself that an emotion does not automatically deserve an action. The same applies to distractions. Every time you allow your attention to be pulled away from what matters, you strengthen the habit of scattered thinking. Every time you deliberately return your attention to the task in front of you, you strengthen concentration. Your mind becomes stronger through repetition. This does not mean you need to become perfect. You will lose focus. You will make poor choices. You will react emotionally sometimes. You will procrastinate. You will make mistakes. The important thing is what you do afterward. Instead of attacking yourself, examine the decision. What happened? What triggered me? What could I have done differently? What can I practice next time? This turns mistakes into training. Without reflection, a mistake simply becomes something painful that you want to forget. With reflection, it becomes information. You begin to recognize your patterns. Maybe you make poor decisions when you are tired. Maybe you say yes when you are afraid of disappointing people. Maybe you spend impulsively when you are stressed. Maybe you avoid difficult conversations because you fear conflict. Maybe you make decisions too quickly when you are excited. Once you see the pattern, you can change it. Awareness comes before transformation. Another powerful practice is creating moments of quiet throughout the day. You do not need hours of meditation to begin training your mind. Even a few minutes without your phone, music, conversation, or constant stimulation can teach you how to sit with your own thoughts. In that quiet, you may notice what your mind has been avoiding. You may realize that you are exhausted. You may recognize that a certain decision is being driven by fear. You may notice that you are chasing something simply because other people are chasing it. You may discover that what you thought you wanted is not actually what you value. Silence creates space for these observations. You can also practice making small decisions more consciously. Before saying yes, pause. Before buying something unnecessary, pause. Before sending an angry message, pause. Before abandoning a goal because progress feels slow, pause. Ask yourself, is this aligned with what I say I want? This question creates consistency between your values and your actions. A strong mind is not built by making one extraordinary decision. It is built by making hundreds of ordinary decisions with awareness. Each small choice is a vote for the person you are becoming. When you choose patience, you strengthen patience. When you choose discipline, you strengthen discipline. When you choose honesty, you strengthen integrity. When you choose reflection instead of reaction, you strengthen awareness. When you choose to keep a promise to yourself, you strengthen self-respect. Over time, these choices become automatic. You no longer need to force yourself to pause every time something happens. You begin to naturally create space before reacting. You begin to naturally consider consequences. You begin to notice when your emotions are influencing your judgment. This is how mental strength is developed, not through one powerful moment, through repetition, through practice, through small choices made when nobody is watching. And when a major decision eventually arrives, you will not be starting from zero. You will bring with you all the small moments in which you practiced staying calm, observing clearly, questioning your assumptions, and choosing deliberately. Your everyday life is already training your mind. The question is whether you are training it consciously or simply allowing every impulse to become a habit. So, when life places a difficult decision in front of you, do not rush to escape the uncertainty. Slow down. Contricate silence. Let the emotions settle. Look at the facts. Ask yourself better questions. And focus your energy on what you can actually control. You do not need to know everything before you take the next step. You do not need everyone's approval. You do not need a guarantee that your choice will lead to a perfect outcome. You need awareness. You need patience. You need the courage to see reality as it is, rather than as fear wants you to see it. Remember, a clear mind does not mean a mind without problems. It means a mind that can face problems without becoming lost inside them. There will always be uncertainty. There will always be people who misunderstand you. There will always be moments when two choices seem difficult. There will always be days when your emotions are louder than your wisdom. But you can learn to become quieter than the noise. You can learn to pause before reacting. You can learn to question the stories your mind creates. You can learn to accept what you cannot control and give your attention to what you can. And most importantly, you can learn to trust yourself, not because you will always make the perfect decision. You won't. But because every mistake can teach you. Every failure can reveal something. Every difficult experience can strengthen your awareness, and every conscious choice can bring you closer to the person you want to become. So the next time you feel confused, don't immediately search for an answer. First, create space, breathe, become still. Then ask yourself, what is true? What matters? What is within my control? What choice will I respect tomorrow? And when you finally know your next step, take it without constantly looking backward. Walk with awareness. Move with discipline. Accept uncertainty. And keep your mind steady. Because when you learn to control the way you think, you change the way you choose. When you change the way you choose, you change the direction of your life. Your life is shaped not only by the big decisions you make once in a while, but by the small decisions you make every single day. So choose consciously, think clearly, and when the world becomes noisy, remember that your greatest strength may simply be the ability to become still enough to hear your own wisdom.